Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, Rebecca Rozenberg joins us for Cat People.
Our guest today is a publicity manager at Simon Schuster. Wait, let me try to take that again. That was a tongue twister, and I knew it was coming.
Loser.
Our guest today is a publicity manager at Simon & Schuster, where she's worked on film history titles like Charlie Chaplin vs. America, When Art, Sex, and Politics Collided, and the forthcoming Joan Crawford, A Woman's Face. Son of a bitch, that is a lot of... Okay. Our guest today is a publicity manager. Son of a bitch. I'm getting it. I'm so tired. It's been a long weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Buddy.
Everybody's calling for some reason. Who knows why? Okay. Our guest today is a publicity manager at Simon & Schuster, where she's worked on film history titles like Charlie Chaplin vs. America, When Art, Sex, and Politics Collided, and the forthcoming Joan Crawford, A Woman's Face, both by Scott Amon. Rebecca Rozenberg joins the show to talk about Cat People. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Hey, welcome to the show, and welcome to seeing Mike absolutely butcher the English language and the written word. I'm so glad you got to see that. I'm so glad that this man gets paid to write.
I've told you before, and I think you know this, that when you acknowledge that I make mistakes, I can't cut those mistakes out of the episode.
But we can acknowledge. We can cut out the acknowledgement of the mistake.
No, you can keep it.
Ergo,
it's a little peek behind the curtain. It's a little peek
all going to be in now. It's just all going to be in. But on the plus side, that does mean
save you some editing.
Your books get plugged 4 times in a row at this point.
Or like 2 and 7/8 times because you kind of don't get through all of them correctly.
We're talking about Cat People. That's what we're here to talk about. I'm forgive me, I'm very tired for reasons that the listeners won't find out about for 5 episodes from now, because we record these in an odd order, but it's fine. We'll tell you guys at some point. We'll tell you when you're ready. But Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be a lot of fun. Cat People is one of those titles I think that Tom and I have been kind of referencing a lot when we were looking ahead in the show. I feel like it's one of those ones, every time we were talking about season 5 with people, Tom would often go, "We got Cat People." And it's one of those ones that's, it was a very exciting prospect to talk about. So we're so glad you're on for that. But let's start just kind of with why Cat People? Why did you narrow in on Cat People, and kind of what's your history with this title specifically?
Yeah. So, I am the child of Jewish refugees from Soviet Ukraine. My first language is Russian. I'm also a graduate of Emerson College's Writing, Literature, and Publishing program, where I took a lot of film and history classes. So I've kind of just had an interest particularly in horror. I remember this is a pretty recent title, but the first horror I remember choosing and picking to watch and actually enjoying was It Follows. And as someone that was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, and at one point I was a severe hypochondriac, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the movie, but the premise of a permanent sexually transmitted disease just following you around for the rest of your life was so terrifying to me. And of course the movie's beautifully shot and has great jump scares and all this campy imagery. But I think that was my first window into seeing how, as a mentally ill person with anxiety disorders and obsessive compulsive disorder, how horror acts both as escapism and as a mirror for our everyday fears. And from then on, I kind of just became obsessed with horror. It gives me this kind of this feeling that the fears I have in real life aren't unfounded, which once we start talking about Cat People is something that is also a motif in horror movies where there are characters that will gaslight or tell another character your fears are unfounded, when in fact they are very real. And that's not something we get a lot in real life, where someone sits you down and says, I see you, and I see your fears, and they make sense.
It's
Yeah.
it's isn't it always a great feeling, Mike, talking to someone and realizing, oh, that's right, they're a child when they go, the first one I picked was
We're
It
so
Follows. Have you
old.
seen it? And I'm
We're
like, oh
so
God,
old.
I was, I think, in year 2 with Lauren at that point. We were like 3 or 4 years out of college, and I'm just like,
Yeah, and we're like, oh
oh,
no.
right,
Yeah,
all right.
Old
I was
men.
to be clear, I was a sophomore in college, so I was,
Okay, so
I wasn't a baby.
okay. Thank God.
Yeah.
This is to be clear. we're all learning. But no, we're
I
old.
also
We're old
didn't. I
men.
also didn't choose this shirt on purpose. I thought this was a different shirt, and I'm like, oh, I have a Fangoria shirt
What do
on.
you mean
Great.
you thought this was Jesus Christ?
Well, I know
I
Mike
thought it
chose
was a
the shirt on
Waxworks
purpose.
records. I thought it was a record store shirt.
Yes, I absolutely chose a themed piece of attire. Rebecca, I think it was also interesting that you prefaced this. We'll get into this more later, but you prefaced this talking about the child of Ukrainian immigrants, things like that, because of course that's also Val Lewton's backstory.
Yes.
That is so much informing that. And he obviously, I don't know, he was never formally diagnosed with anything, but him talking about like his two great fears are cats and being touched, which is such a specific combo of things, and also really tracks with this movie.
It's that's kind of crazy because their cats are kind of afraid of being touched as well. Like it's something that I've had people point out about me is when you get too close to me, I'll be like, nope. And cats will do something similar. But you asked what my fascination with cat people was. It's in her Irina, the main character, her gradual transformation, which is left purposefully ambiguous into a cat person. It's kind of a relic of her past that she's obsessed with, to the point that she's practicing this kind of extreme self-control that limits her ability to participate in enjoying everyday life, which is a really great metaphor for mental illness, really great metaphor for obsessive compulsive disorder, particularly. And then her simultaneous treatment as someone exotic, an immigrant whose customs and history have to be explained at length to a very normative American public. And the fact that she's considered mentally unwell, crazy. They try to institutionalize her. She's not believed by normative society around her, which seeks to entrap her like the panther in the cage. They seek to get her committed. It really speaks to me as a first generation immigrant woman with experience with mental illness. It has so many really incredible layers and depth to it. That speak to me. So.
When did you first see it? The film, was it in the run up to this, or had you seen it previously?
I hadn't seen it previously. I had wanted to watch it because I have the Criterion channel. I subscribe, and they did a whole a couple years ago. They did like a whole monster. Early monster horror. So it was like The Blob, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. I watched, and by the time they took cat people off there, I hadn't seen it. I hadn't gotten to seeing it, but yeah, I was really interested in that whole kind of retrospective.
Tom, when was your first time seeing cat people? What's your kind of history with? Yeah.
I actually just looked it up on Letterboxd just to double check. First time I watched it was summer of 2020, so lockdown. A lot of movies watched in that year. Not like it's never. I watch too many movies in general, but that's besides the point. It was one of those movies, growing up, you watch those fucking like A&E or whatever it was, Bravo, 101 Scariest Movie Moments or whatever, and you listen to the greats talk, Carpenter, Dante, whatever, and they talk about cat people, and I was like, all right, I want to see it, I'll get to it at some point, whatever, and then Criterion put out the disc. We had nowhere to go because there was a pandemic that we just kind of pretended ended, but whatever. It's not like Mike dealt with that pretend epidemic 2 weeks ago.
No, my brain fog was fun.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's fine. You're not going to have any issues
Brain
with
fog,
that.
the COVID brain fog is real.
Oh,
it's bad.
No, you're kidding. It's awesome. I love reading articles I wrote and going, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know that. It's great. It's so fun.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's fine. So yeah, I watched it then, really liked it. I've seen a few more of the Lewtons and a few more Jacques Tourneur movies since then, and
we covered a Jacques Tourneur movie.
Yes, we did, and even I remember that. And I have permanent brain fog. That's called wet brain.
Damp
so yeah, it's damp. It's
damp in there.
Oh God, it's so damp. Yeah. And rewatching it for this, I was excited to rewatch it again. One, because I really like the movie. I'm a big horror guy. So horror centric that I don't even realize I'm wearing horror t-shirts at the moment of recording. And also it's, 72 minutes long, which is just like, hell yeah. I don't have to really, I don't have to invest too much into this rewatch. This is, roughly an episode of Ted Lasso season 3.
Yeah. Just one Black Mirror episode. Great.
Yeah. This is a Stranger
Things. It's a Stranger Things, which is really just like, man, fucking okay.
Shit! A cat person's here.
Cat
oh no!
Here.
A cat is here.
She's been asking to come up, so figured
it's
introduce her early.
Like watching this shit, man, it just annoys the fuck out of me. Not just about the streaming TV show thing where episodes of these goddamn shows are as long as fucking Cat People or the horror movies of the 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. But also just like movies where it's like, oh, we got to be 2.5 hours long to like really sell this story. And it's like, no, you don't. You really don't. You know why? Because I watched the movie where a lady's like, hey, if you kiss me and I get too horny, I'm going to become a cat. And they're like, no, you're not. And she goes, oh, but I am. And then she does. And you're like, great. I got everything in 70 minutes. So let's get back to pacing movies to the point where my ADD brain...
Well, it's so funny you say that, Tom. I was on the phone with my grandfather recently, and, sometimes you hear about the past and you go, oh, you're nostalgic that you never saw. He turned around and he said to me, he goes, oh, yeah, I remember, like, I used to, on my lunch break, I used to go down to the theater, see a movie, you usually take a long lunch break, you'd be back in, like, 80 minutes. And I was like, that sounds heavenly. I would love to be able to go see a movie on my lunch break instead of having to plot the invasion of Normandy just to be able to watch a film. Oh my God.
It's annoying. As much as I love this wonderful art form that I've dedicated my entire worthless life to, please shorten these movies. Please. For the love of God.
There's no reason for a movie to be 3 hours long. Absolutely.
Unless Payacon is in it, I don't need your movie to be 3 hours long.
Okay, a caveat, unless it's The Brutalist.
I mean, well, hang on. I love The Brutalist, but Tom wants to be grumpy about it.
Because I like when movies end well, and not because it's, there. I don't know.
So
what if a man got... I don't know. Never mind.
Okay. As you've done this, you had 2.5 hours for this.
An hour less than The Brutalist?
As for Cat People, I will say this is one of those rare cases where I don't know when I first saw it. This is, unsurprisingly, Cat People and a lot of those Val Lewton pictures. I Walked with a Zombie, The Seventh Victim. Those are all part of the Saturday morning sci-fi monster marathon special of those Svengoolie type movies that I just saw as a child to one degree or another, right? With, I don't know, at different clips, at different parts. It's like how I've said to Tom a million times, like with the Godzilla movies, I know I've seen them all. I couldn't tell you what happens in any of them because they were just an amalgam. Same with Cat People and the sequel, which the name is escaping me right now. Child of Cat People. What the hell's the sequel's title?
Cat People Returns. I don't know.
It's something. It's something, and it's also because the Cat People sequel is also very much not a Cat People's Curse of the Cat People. Sorry, Curse of the Cat
People. There we go.
It's not a Cat People sequel. Like it's clearly one of those cases of like, Cat People made money. What scripts do we have that we can turn into Cat People too?
And then there's something where Dr. Judd also appears again, in Cat People,
the seventh
spoiler alert, he dies. So
Dr. Judd is in The Seventh Victim, but he's also not. And he references cat people, kind of. See, we used to not care about continuity. God bless it. I say bring that back. I say who gives a shit,
agree.
You know?
Yep. Yeah. Give me all the plot holes.
Yeah. But it is crazy. You know, I love a lot of these old black and white horror films. I watched them all with my dad and what have you. Cat People is one of those ones that it's truly crazy to watch as an adult. Because it's like, you know, when I watch, there's little nuances I pick up in things like Frankenstein or Wolfman as an adult, but like those are still the same movie I watched as a kid. When I watch Cat People, I just kind of find myself going, so this is primarily an adult melodrama about infidelity, huh? This is just...
It's like after you've had your own relationships with people, you're kind of just like, this is weird. The way these people are interacting is strange, and it's purposefully strange.
It's also just like, you kind of remember as a child watching this, and I was the child watching this. As a child watching this, you remember the stuff about her turning into a cat, right?
Yeah.
And so as an adult, you're sitting there watching a long, great scene that's basically just going, listen, you wouldn't sleep with me, so this is what people do. This is what relationships are. I went out and found a woman that would touch me, and you're like, so I was watching this as a kid, huh? I was, as a kid, I was like, sign me up. Yep. Let's get into this melodrama about assimilation. Okay.
You're just waiting for her to turn into a cat. I bet the movie was kind of disappointing to you as a kid.
No.
You know, you don't really see her do the whole, you know, if you had seen all the any werewolf movies or anything before that, you're kind of just, you're waiting for the clothes to rip off and
That's the thing. I liked this a lot as a kid. It's just that you only remember the stuff that clicks for you. And, you know, as a kid, like all of the conversational stuff just kind of like goes over your head as you're sitting there going, all right, this guy's going to get killed. He's definitely going to get killed by the monster. And then you're like, oh, this is sad.
Yeah, it's just sad.
This is sad.
It's quite realistic. Realistic as, you know, a werecat movie can be.
Yeah, I mean, I assume...
Listen, been there.
I assume...
Yeah, exactly, haven't we all?
And listen, well, this is the thing I need to know, is I assume that it's fiction, what this movie depicts, that if you marry an Eastern European woman, she will turn into a panther and try and murder people around you. I'm hoping that's fiction, and if it's not, someone needs to let me know fast, because I'm in trouble.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna
cross on that one, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you. I'm sworn to secrecy.
Oh God, it's a pact.
Yeah.
You're that lady in the restaurant that walks by and speaks in code.
Maya sistra. Yeah, my sister. Yeah, me. That's what, when I meet your fiance. That's exactly what I'm gonna say. Be like,
well, I don't say the full word. We haven't revealed that to the
audience. We haven't done the big reveal. That's 5 episodes later.
That's
I got
spoilers. You guys got to wait for that. You know.
No spoilers. Got it.
Yeah, you know, skipping ahead. You know, we're throwing.
Why are we skipping ahead? What?
We'll talk about it when we cover His Girl Friday. That will come up then. You know, we got to do the dramatic reveal. It's a whole thing. You know,
I don't like this chicanery.
Tom. That's just because you don't like when we plan anything in advance for this show.
I don't want to fucking think about things ahead of time. What the fuck is that? I did that shit when I was in school. It's like, oh, I got to deal with fucking a test on Tuesday. Oh no, no. Let me just drink and wander through the day in a daze. Leave me alone. Enough already.
You're like a cartoon character.
I am. and like a cartoon character, I just want to be clobbered in the head with a mallet. That's all I want.
He is like a cartoon character, and that cartoon character was on the show Aqua Teen Hunger Force and lived next door to the food people. We know this.
They're the food freaks.
We accept this, and we love them just the same. So let's get more into Cat People. But before we talk more about what we thought about Cat People, let's hear what the Library of Congress had to say. Here's what the National Film Registry had to say about Cat People.
Cat People. Val Lewton achieved the almost miraculous when he produced Cat People. He and his team, which included director Jacques Tourneur, cinematographer Nicholas Musaraka, editor Mark Robson, and composer Roy Webb, among others, created a spine-tingling horror movie with no monsters, no special effects, and virtually no budget, yet it netted RKO almost 20 times its cost. The film's tension outweighs its thin story about a woman, Simone Simon, who believes she's the subject of a curse that will turn her into a panther. Kent Smith and Jane Randolph are the other two sides of the love triangle that forms the plot.
So that's what the Library of Congress had to say. I think it's super interesting that it leads with Val Lewton, because I will say, at least from my end, right? And it comes to horror. Because I grew up with all of these movies, as a child, and they all kind of exist as a block, I knew things like, oh, well, Cat People isn't one of the Universal horror movies. But it was a case of, like, I never really attached any kind of creatives to them in the way that I would with films I discovered as I got older, right? I knew what a Steven Spielberg movie was, a Scorsese movie was, those kind of things, a Tim Burton movie, what have you. But those movies that I grew up with, those old horror movies, those like B pictures that were on a Saturday morning, as a child, I knew Roger Corman and I knew James Whale. And those were like the two names I knew of, well, these people in different ways make some of these movies I like watching on TV, right? Mm-hmm. And Cat People just always kind of existed as one of these B pictures that I watched, as a child, one of these Saturday morning horror movies. And I remember vividly, Val Lewton is the subject of Karina Longworth's, I think, third episode of her now long-running podcast, You Must Remember This. And I do remember, like, listening to that and having that moment when she's listing off all of the Val Lewton movies, of Cat People, I Walked with the Zombie, The Seventh Victim. It really did feel like the Homer Simpson bit when he's finding out about, like, bacon and ham and all coming from the same animal and going, sure, Lisa, a magical animal makes all that. I was so, like... Because I was just like, I saw the name Val Lewton, and I'm like, I don't know what is this? This was, and then to find out, like, oh, okay, all of the movies that stuck out to me that weren't Universal movies and weren't Corman movies are kind of all this guy, right? And it was an interesting thing, especially because, again, he's not the director, right? He is the producer. He is much more of a Corman-y figure. And I just remember, like, that being kind of the spark where these otherwise disparate movies just started to connect for me in my head, where I suddenly was like, oh, that makes sense. And that, yes, that does have a lot in common with this and this and that and so on and so forth. And I think that caused me to go back and rewatch these films in a new light and try and appreciate the Val Lewton of it all, within all of these. And I think especially when you do that, God damn, Cat People feels like a little miracle, like it really, like, it's one of those cases of it's a movie you can watch without any of the background information or anything and still come away having a good time, as I certainly did as a young person. But it's one of those movies that I really do feel like, and we have this with other films, we certainly have this with horror a lot. I would say Cat People is akin to, like, Night of the Living Dead, where, like, when you watch it knowing nothing about how it came to be, you enjoy it, but every new thing you learn about how it happened and, like, the budget it's made on, or, like, the corners that were cut, or all of that, you just appreciate it all the more, and you come away even more impressed that this thing has the power that it does,
Well, it's interesting because when you think about the history of horror and stuff, we talk about old movies and pre-code, whatever, like what we have these preconceived notions about what old movies used to be like. And old horror movies kind of fall into that where, they're not showing you a lot because the gore, like makeup effects kind of were, they were good. Like, they were good. Boris Karloff as Frankenstein was good, but, like, they're not going to be allowed to have gore effects, or the like werewolf transformations aren't going to be that elaborate. It's kind of just going to be time-lapse photography and what have you. But, like, you still weren't getting a lot. But yet you were still getting what you were going to see. You got to see a monster, you got to see a werewolf, a vampire,
It's
a
impressive because it
creature.
relies a lot more on psychological horror, and
Well,
that's something that this movie does very well, especially with its pacing.
but that
Yeah.
and that's the thing about this movie is that, not to say this is the first, I don't have the complete history of every fucking horror movie ever made, but this feels like one of the most important ones of kind of purposefully making not seeing something a part of the filmmaking, because those older horror movies, they didn't show you something because, well, they just couldn't do it either technology wise or just censorship wise. They just couldn't show you stuff. Where this is, as much as they want to kind of spin the narrative that, oh, the budget was so low that we really couldn't do anything, it did feel a little bit like, all right, we have a low budget, so how do we don't really need to show you anything, right? Because, well, we're not going to be able to show you her transform into a cat, so why even pretend like we're going to even like try to do this?
And I think it adds an interesting layer where it becomes almost purposefully ambiguous, where
yes,
you're the watcher of the film, which is going to be at first an American audience, is put into Oliver's place of, well, is she going crazy, or is she? And this is something that we see a lot of future horror movies do too. Is she going crazy, or is she actually turning into a cat person? And it's, up until the very end, you really don't know, and that's something the film does exceptionally well within its budget.
And, the budget thing is something that's interesting too, because we talk a lot about how things used to be versus how they are now. And the budget was $150,000, which, yes, is not a big budget. But when you do the inflation, that is equal today to around $3 million. And they had a little under a month to shoot. And then when you hear about how horror filmmaking that's not on a studio level today is done, where these guys are like, I know someone personally who made a horror movie, the fourth entry in a horror movie franchise, in 11 days for $400,000. And that's not a rarity these days. And you go, okay, maybe they weren't as crunched for time as they maybe want us to believe. But yes,
now, Tom, let me clarify this, and because I don't know. You were very vague, so I definitely don't know who you're talking about or what fourth horror franchise installment was. But did that horror film get to use the sets from Magnificent Ambersons? I don't know. Did they use the Magnificent Amberson sets for this?
I'll have to talk to my friend, okay. But I don't think so. I think
it, and I don't remember the staircase.
You know what? They might have used sets from The Stranger. Orson got around a lot, so I mean,
it is weird how in that movie too they take 15 minutes to show you George Stevens' footage from Germany. It's odd. It was an odd term, but I respect it. No, I mean that's one thing we should talk about when we're talking about the budget and all of this stuff. Is I watched this movie a lot as a younger person, and then I eventually saw Magnificent Ambersons. And then remember reading, well, Cat People reuses a lot of sets from RKO's The Magnificent Ambersons, going, get out of town. Watching it for this, just kept going, yeah, there's that. Yep, there it is. Yep, there's that. Okay, there's that. Pretty great.
Good old-fashioned recycling.
Yeah. But that's just like, a crazy little, like, oh, that's how we used to do things.
Another thing that you just miss in horror movies these days, man, is like I've talked about. I miss the shameless hucksterism of horror movies, and just we're just ripping off Get Out. Let's just be honest. Like I miss the days of, you brought up Corman. Corman would do that shit all the time, where you just be like, yeah, that's the same spaceship set from Battle Beyond the Stars. All of these other things that he did.
Well, then let's give props. Let's give props to the one person who did do that recently. I always bring this up, but props to Darren Lynn Bousman.
Yeah.
Who famously designed
basically
a bunch
stole
of scenes.
A movie.
Yeah, designed a bunch of scenes for whatever Saw sequel he was working on, because he needed those sets for Repo, a Genetic Opera, and didn't have the budget to build them. So he got the other movie to build them, and it was like, come on, just come here, and we'll shoot fast. God bless it. And talking about hucksterism, Val Lewton is a perfect example of hucksterism. A thing I didn't realize is like he got his start writing novels, including erotic novels.
Of course.
And one was called, I think it's called No Bed of Her Own, which is cited as being one of the first novels to depict the Great Depression. But it's also very much a tawdry novel. It's just like, these women had no jobs, so they had to return to prostitution. And the book gets sold to, I want to say Universal, and they cast Clark Gable in it. And then they end up just reworking the script and reworking the script and reworking the script to the point where it does not resemble Val Lewton's novel at all. And his attitude was seemingly, did they pay me? Great. I got a check? Awesome. Cool. Who cares?
Mad
God
respect.
love it. Yeah. And, you know, with this in particular, and you see this with all of films, but especially this one, we're talking about like the lack of like the special effects, the lack of cinemas. There are horror films that do that, but where they kind of fail, and we can think of a lot of, you know, bad slasher movies that do it and so on and so forth, where they fail is that they're like, well, we don't need to show the monster, we don't need that, you know, special effects, and we can just have, you know, a scene where the camp counselors make out, or, you know, a scene where, I don't know, some guy talks about his dad. What Lewton understands with Cat People is, okay, what I'm actually going to make, as I was saying, was like, what I'm actually going to make is a melodrama about assimilation. And I'm going to put horror elements in it. And the reason the movie works is that there is actually, it's not just what I think a lot of modern horror does, which is like, this is a metaphor for trauma. What this does is it's like, we're going to have characters have real conversations. You can play that scene of Simone Simon processing, my husband has just gone out and had an affair because I don't want to sleep with him. Because I don't feel comfortable doing that. You could play that scene in a movie that has 0 cat people, and that still works.
But then why the fuck would I be watching a movie that has no cat people?
Cat people
I
in
understand.
it, yeah.
I understand. Well, that is unfortunately, you know, Rebecca, you're just meeting us for the first time. I don't know if you know this. Tom's rule is he will not watch any movie that does not have cat people, meaning he has only ever seen Cat People, Paul Schrader's Cat People, and the trauma movie Horny Teenage Cat Girls in Heat. Those are the only 3 movies he has seen.
Listen, don't lie to her.
It's been a rough podcast.
I don't watch trauma movies.
No, that's true. That's true.
They're terrible.
I just had
They're
to
awful.
pull. I might be getting that title wrong. I just remember when I interned at Trauma, like going through the archives, and that was a title you come across and go, well, I mean, I know what I'm getting. God bless him. You know what movie you're seeing.
Piece of shit.
Yeah. But speaking of, I will admit, I've seen Cat People many times. I had never seen the Paul Schrader Cat People remake until prepping for this show. Rebecca, have you seen the Paul Schrader Cat People?
I have not.
Okay.
And I was waiting to do this until I exposed myself to it because I felt like I was going to be mad.
Tom, you've seen the Paul Schrader Cat People, right?
You know I have.
How do you feel about the Paul Schrader Cat People?
Oh, it's absolutely bananas, and I love it.
Well, Paul Schrader's bananas.
He's a fucking
I will
maniac.
say this.
Yeah.
I will say this. I had not seen it. Then the allegations came out, and then I watched this movie and went, "You don't say."
Yeah.
You don't say.
You needed cat people to make you realize that.
Allegation.
Have you seen any Paul Schrader movie?
Yeah, I didn't
All
see
about
any
psychotically repressed men.
Yeah, I did not see. I don't know what you're talking about. I saw no red flags in the canyons. I don't know what you're talking about. Totally chill, totally normal.
Right, well, I haven't seen the canyons because
no one saw it. No,
except for you.
Not a living soul saw that movie. But no, I do not care for the Paul Schrader Cat People, and I think part of that is an insane movie, and part of that is just
you say that like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, like that is kind of the thing of every once in a while when modern filmmakers take an old movie and go, well, now we can actually show the stuff that they didn't show. it almost feels like somebody, like if tomorrow, Sean Levy was like, guys, I'm remaking Jaws because with CGI, we can show the shark now. And you're like, I don't know,
The shark's already terrifying.
Man, I don't know, buddy.
Listen, I need to, honestly, I'm mad because if you say that shit, it'll be like Beetlejuice and it'll happen because that hack is just going to weasel his way into everything that we love and ruin it.
It only happens if we say it 3 times, Tom. That's Beetlejuice rules.
So that's what I'm saying. Don't talk about it again.
I only said Sean Levy CGI Jaws once. Well, now twice.
All right, he's already going after Star Wars.
I won't say it again.
He's already going after Star Wars.
All I can say.
So don't do it. Don't do it. Star Wars is already in a bad spot. We don't need.
I won't do it.
We don't need other Amblin film brat movies. Well, listen. I listen. The Cat People movie is fucking psychotic, but I think it does what any remake should do, which is does its own thing. And yeah, I know you can get a little old man uptight about, well, they showed me the thing, and it's like, all right, well, it's the '80s. It was the era of let's just have makeup effects guys do a lot of coke and just make the craziest fucking like dummies and bladder molds that they can make, and just like, well, what if these cats were like related and they also fucked? And it's like, all right, you crazy Calvinist weirdo, like, I'm into this shit, man. It's not gonna be like Nightmare on Elm Street 4. What if there was a baby? It's weird. Like, it's weird. Give me weird. I'll take weird over fucking Sean Levy's Cat People.
The last I'll say about Cat People, and I want to see how mad Tom gets, is now that I have watched Paul Schrader's Cat People, I'm gonna make a statement right now. I think Sleepwalkers is better. Okay, so.
That's because you are a contrarian asshole. And I hope your fiance does turn into a panther and eat your face.
I'm going to just, spoilers all about. Rebecca, have you ever seen Sleepwalkers?
Don't think I have,
okay,
no.
Don't watch Paul Schrader's Cat People.
Shut up. Watch Cat People. Watch them both.
Stephen King, yes. Well, because here's what I'll say. Tom, you can say whatever you want about Paul Schrader's Cat People. We can even compliment this Cat People, but neither of them contains one of the great lines in cinema. Stop looking at me, you fucking cat! Which a man yells at an actual cat.
Well, something I yell at my cats constantly.
I also yell that at Kyle, and he's just like, but I'm not a cat. I'm like, but are you?
Yeah. We do some, honestly, if we feed him a couple of Temptations treats out of our hands and put him down for a nap.
I'm pretty sure what happened is we gave him a snack at Alamo, and we've just never been able to shake
That's how
him.
it works.
He's like a gremlin.
You want some shrimpy shrimps, buddy? You want some shrimpy shrimps? There you go. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble. I just realized I said a treat flavor out loud, and the cat is going to start pawing at the door.
Well, listen, what is the Cat People episode without cats? Mine are true. Walking around wreaking havoc right now. So
that's fair. I mentioned Simone Simon before. A thing that is insane to me, in a way to consider, is Simone Simon. About 4 years before Cat People, is in La Bête au Monde by Jean Renoir. Which is, you want to talk psychosexual, that's that movie that, Tom, you and I, we watched back in college, and I remember that your comment during Le Bête au Monde was, does this man want to fuck that train? So...
Did I?
Yes, you did. Do you remember that movie at all?
Not even a lick of it.
Do a quick Google. You might remember from a screenshot. But so 4 years ago, she is in Jean Renoir's Le Bête au Monde. And then... her next film after Cat People, I could not track down a copy in time. But again, I find Simone Simon very effective in Le Bête au Monde. I find her extraordinarily effective in this film, right? And she's great in this film. But what if I were to tell you her follow-up to this film is a musical comedy called Tahiti Honey?
I
mean, yeah, that's basically how Hollywood worked back then.
I mean, she was also apparently extraordinarily difficult to work with on set. She once threw during the filming of Cat People, she threw like a cup of coffee or something on her wardrobe to delay a whole day of filming. Like she was not easy to work with. I think it was Val or someone that had to pull her aside at one point and be like, you're making this harder than it needs to be. So, which is also a thing that cats do.
Yeah,
My cats
and
are doing right now.
look, I'm not gonna give too much insight into my mindset, but I'd give her a pass on all that. I'd be like, fine, just keep yelling. It's fine. You can do whatever you want.
We're
you do
Italian.
whatever you like.
That's usually
just
how it
what
goes.
that's our
with
lot in
women.
life. That's
Well,
our
she's
lot in
French,
life.
so
Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't have to be Italian as long as they can be committed.
What happens? Yeah, see, as Italians, what happens is a woman that we're dating yells at us, and a small part of our brain goes, yes, mama, it's okay. I'm gonna make you proud. I'm gonna make you proud. It's how it works. It's unfortunate, but it's just the thing, and we all.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's just that as Italians, we're all fucking little psychos when we're younger, and this is our way of like, oh well, I guess we need to be healed as we're adults, so we need a woman to just yell at us and potentially burn us in the middle of the night. I don't know what I'm talking about. What?
You're gonna wake up with a horse head.
I just go up to women at bars and be like, "Will you burn me in the middle of the night?" And they go, "What?" And I'm just like, "Well, then I'm not interested."
Kyle, watch out.
I thought
I'm not Italian. I don't know, but
hey, they don't have to be Italian. They just have to be okay with scorching Italian flesh.
What's that? I can't see Kyle on camera, but I'm seeing a look of regret on his face. It's great. It's great.
They need to look. The women we date need to look at a wooden spoon and be like activated, like a Winter Soldier.
Well, that does weirdly kind of tie into the fact that like this movie, in a way, again, we are talking about it as a horror movie because its genre is horror, but it's also just kind of about Oliver Reed being a bit of a fuck up. And not Oliver Reed.
I really wish it was the actor Oliver Reed. Just his drunken, dainty ape ass, just be like, just stumbling around, be like, "Oh, you're not a penta. I'm dating my coworker now. Do you want to have 15 bottles of whiskey?"
I picture him in his role as the uncle from the Who's Tommy. That's how I want him to be in this movie. I
just see him as just so he's just so quintessentially American. It's the kind of American that my parents will point out and be like, that's an American. And to the point that he disregards all of Irina's cultural quirks, or says and continues to put her down. He's just so normative, and even the first scene, he's just in a corner like sipping some soda pop, just good all American kid. When he goes to the restaurant, they give him apple pie, as American as apple pie. He's just so he's purposefully just this kind of blank slate stereotypical American.
And they got a really good guy to do that, because this guy, I think, at every point in the movie has the same facial expression. He is just, I'm not going to say he's a bad actor because I haven't seen him in anything, but you watch him in this and you're like, all right, he's either a bad actor and they're using his bad actor qualities really well, or he just knows exactly like, oh, I need to play this as the most bland milquetoast guy in the world. This guy,
and you have to wonder, was that the direction, or is that really just him? Because I'm sure one of you will know more about this, but I read that he was cast. Val or someone that was working on the movie just saw him riding a bike on set, and they were like, "You, you on the bike."
It's genuinely crazy how much that happened in the old days. It's truly wild how often they would do that. I wonder how much of that, at the end of the day, stems from like in the silent film era, these directors being like, listen, if they look good looking enough, if they look like how I want them to look, whatever. It doesn't really matter if they can act. I can cut around that. And it's harder to do in the sound era, but
But yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You go.
No, it's just, these couple decades of transition into the sound era where there really is no, like, what is good acting? Because when you look at critiques of this film back when it first premiered, that was the number one critique, was the acting was wooden. These were not great. I'm like, for for its time, these actors get across, they deliver their lines. Yes, maybe they're lacking affectation or some sort of emotion, or some things are a little bit too dramatic, but it for its time, it seemed like perfectly fine acting.
Well,
Well,
I think this.
that's just a thing that I think you see even today. It's that if it's a horror movie, it's going to get graded on almost like a negative curve, where it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to get the benefit of the doubt. People are going to think they're smarter than it, and it's like, and listen, sometimes you can get it. Maybe you miss something the first time, and you read up on the history of this movie, that it was so successful, basically made 30 times its budget back, was in theaters so long, other Lewton movies got delayed because it was still in theaters. And it was in theaters so long that critics that saw it and reviewed it negatively were able to go back like later, many weeks and months later, and rewatch it and be like, oh, okay, we kind
I
of
see
missed
what you
what this
mean.
movie. Yeah, okay, I didn't really get it because this was like almost like a first of its kind of thing, so you
Mhm.
can sort of miss it. But this is you watch it and all right, if you don't know what the movie is when you're going in, you might think like, okay, in the beginning, oh, the acting's a little cheesy or wooden. I guess this is a B movie for the time. But then you watch it and you go, well, this is, amongst many things it's about, it is a movie about repression.
Mhm.
So like there has to be that quality of they're not going to overly emote, excluding the fact that at the time this wasn't like, the this was pre, Brando and Clift and all these, method actors changing what acting could be. um it's just like, all right, well, one, it's a horror movie, so it is playing in a, by the end of the movie, we get the confirmation, not the real world. There is a magical realism to this thing. There is a heightened quality. So you kind of have to give it, you got to let it figure it, breathe. You got to figure out
Mhm.
the wavelength it's on. And horror, I think, out of anything, from the beginning of cinema to now, you still see it. People just don't want to give them credit until
I
like 5 or 10 years later, and they can go, haha, I've rediscovered this
but
thing.
I would also counter, Tom, that the other thing that this movie does is,
Well,
I'm
always
not
got to
going to say,
disagree with me.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying, in addition to what you're saying, I also think, um, we have this idea, and we always have this idea of what certain types of acting are supposed to be, like the way you're
Mhm.
supposed to act in a certain genre of movie, right?
Yeah.
And I think now, as a modern audience, we look at Cat People and go like, yes, this is horror movie acting, right?
Hmm.
But remember, at the time this is coming out, when you look at those Universal horror movies, they're still acting in kind of a Grand Guignol tradition, right? I
Yeah.
love those Universal movies, but like those famous lines, and the children of the night, what music they make, and it's alive. It's very dramatic, right? Like all of these characters in all of these movies are delivering lines that should be accompanied by a hand jutting forward so that the back row can see it. Um, and this movie doesn't have characters acting that way. Now, by the time we get to the 50s sci-fi movies, I can absolutely see the acting in The Blob or Invasion of the Body Snatchers or whatever in these Val Lewton movies, right? Where, as Rebecca was saying before, like, having a character who is playing not just an American, but basically Johnny All-American, right?
Mhm.
Is, that's a character. That's a character type. That's an archetype. But it doesn't feel like those Universal horror movies. It doesn't feel like when horror is supposed to be gothic. And so, in addition to what you're saying, which I agree with, the idea of horror always being graded on a curve, you can also feel these critics watching this movie and going, that's not how you're supposed to act in
Oh yeah.
this kind of movie. The same way, like, when you see negative comments from the time about something like a 2001 A Space Odyssey, and they're basically being like, what the hell are you talking about? What's Keir Dullea doing in this? Like, you're supposed to be like Bill Shatner in Star Trek, or, it's supposed to be like Robinson Crusoe on Mars, or what have you,
Well,
Uh,
it's also like, not to do that thing of like separating them because of what this is really more of a thriller than anything, because it isn't for the time or the movies before it or the movies that come after it, it doesn't really fit into what you ostensibly think of the horror mold, which is, things kind of happening throughout, where there's, highs and lows, peaks and valleys, where, tensions built, released, tensions built, released, where a thriller, much like this, is about building the tension throughout to a final release. And I don't necessarily think that people had this kind of thing in their head at the time, because, like I said, even though horror movies at the time weren't, shotgunning fake heads to have explode, blood fly everywhere, it was still like, all right, here's Dracula. He's doing some weird shit. Oh, here's the monster. He just lynched a guy. He just threw a kid into the lake. Like there's highs and lows where, this is more akin to like what we see sort of going forward, especially with the film brat era, when guys like Polanski or whatever, with Rosemary's Baby, or what's the other one? Fuck, I always forget the name. The one with the lady in the apartment.
Repulsion.
Thank you. Shit like that. And, it's sort of kind of become the mold for what, people like to coin elevated horror today, where it's about that stretching the thing out into the breaking point for one final scare, because this isn't a movie with a lot of stuff happening horror, genre-wise, until the pool scene.
Yeah, and we can debate whether or not that was planned or that was a budget issue. But when you read the National Film Registry kind of longer essay about why this movie was inducted, it makes a really great comparison to Miles Davis's music, where it says it's not about the notes that he does play, it's about the notes that he doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's how you read into the silences. And as someone that works a lot with literature and fiction, I think it translates across the board to film, to literature. Once you trust the audience enough to infer an emotion from simple dialogue or from a very simple scene, you allow the reader, the watcher, to fill in the lines, to create their own mood, to have their own takeaways, which creates so much more of an enjoyable experience. And I think that's what this film does. Well, whether that was purposeful or budgetary issues, we can debate, but it just does it so well.
To me, the key thing is, I think it can work, right? But I think, you mentioned, like, we talked about, like, what the modern elevated horror does, right? Now, this movie is a slow burn, but
it's 70 minutes.
It's a 70 minutes, as slow as 70 minutes can go.
But also, so many movies and television shows and all try and do the slow burn thing, but the difference is you can sustain a movie on mood for the bulk of it if the stuff happening is interesting, right? And
also, just before you continue, also, it's not one note tonally, because this movie isn't a funeral dirge.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's that when you watch, like, there are so many TV shows today, as people joke about the Surf Dracula formula, where it's Surf Dracula and he only gets the surfboard at the end of the season, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, that thing is like, now there are so many people who are so conditioned to watch something and go, well, you don't understand. The reason that nothing happens is because it's building up to the finale. And it's like, the thing that makes Cat People so effective, in a way, is that from a horror standpoint, right, we're building up to that pool scene. We're building up to that. But the characters and their scenes are engaging. When I watched this movie, again, in prep for this show, nothing horror stuck with me as much as Oliver coming home and saying, what happened tonight happens in every family. I was on edge. You've got to forgive me. Where it's like that scene is interesting to hear that said, and to hear that, look, it happens in every family. You've got to forgive me. That is interesting. This movie doesn't work if the scenes in between the suspense are just treading water.
Yeah, there's nothing extra about this film. Yeah. And I think, and it's deliberate. I think the plot moves so quickly, because that's how quick that relationship moved.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Oliver, he's like, I don't think I really know her. And it's like that Honora moment. You don't know him.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really, I mean, it really hits home for, especially once Alice gives this long speech of like, well, a life partner is this, like, well, we'll never be strangers to each other. Irina's a stranger to you. It really hits home of like, she's infatuated with her. It was a shotgun marriage. And you have to wonder, it's almost like, is it the Henry VIII effect? Do you think if you get married, she's gonna consummate the marriage immediately? It places a lot of expectation on a woman, and that's just something that in the movie Irina just doesn't know how to deal with. She's just, again, we use this word, repressed, and it's because she kind of has to be, because both societies that she's lived in have given her these very real fears about what happens if she isn't just this kind of stoic model woman.
Well, and there's also the element of, we kind of get to almost be from her perspective a bit, which is at a certain point you find yourself looking not even at Oliver, but just going, lady, if you liked him so much, why didn't you just say that at any point? This seems like a deliberate trap. What do you mean? Why couldn't you just tell him? You know what I mean? Like, that is that element as well of like that,
But I feel like she does tell him. I mean, I don't think the film, I mean, because it's, the 1940s, it couldn't just be like, well, we can't have sex or else I'll claw your eyes out. Like,
no, I'm sorry. Let me be clear. I'm referring to the coworker he has the affair with, right?
Oh.
Where, like, when we first meet her, she's like, well, any gal that you like, I'm sure I'm going to like, which just reminds you of the John Mulaney bit of why, about the planning the Ocean's 11 scheme of like, no, two would be off on the side saying rude things to the other. You're just like, no, this isn't going to work, man. This is not what's happening here. So when there's
at the same time, like, if she said that, do you think he would care? I think at that point, when he introduces kind of the fact that Irina is in his life, what is Alice supposed to do? No, you can't be with her. I'm in love with you and I'm your coworker. Like,
well,
it's, yeah.
I mean, but I'm saying, like, from Irina's perspective, right? You have to kind of feel like, hey, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean this woman that you've known a long time just seemingly suddenly decided she wanted to have a love affair with you? Could you guys not have figured this out before you married me? That seems like a thing that you should have figured out one way or the other.
That's that feeds into her. She blames herself.
Yeah.
That is a trigger. Part of the trigger for her transformation is she can't get close to Oliver in the same way that Alice can.
And I don't know, do you guys read Alice from the first scene? Do you read her as having a yearning for Oliver?
No.
Because
maybe originally audiences picked up on this differently when maybe this the era difference, but she didn't seem like a threat to me. She organized that engagement party.
Yeah, she's not like the friend in Vertigo who's just like, Jimmy Stewart, come see all these bras I've designed. It's not one of those. Where like it's just that you always forget that's a subplot in that movie.
I don't forget. It just delights me to no end because it's so funny. Just like, hey, Jimmy Stewart, look at these clothings I made for big old knockers. Do these interest you? He's like, oh, I'm afraid of heights. Oh no! It's like, just look at the tits, man. Like, everything will be fine. Like, enough.
No,
just
he
enough.
has
that gives him vertigo too.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, like, that is one of those things that one of the really effective things about this movie, and it's not the first horror movie to make a quote unquote sympathetic monster, but like, there is no part of this movie where you are rooting for Oliver or Alice.
Well,
right?
I
if
also
this was
think
a modern horror film, it justifiably should end with them getting absolutely murdered.
they would absolutely get their shit wrecked. You know, the cat person herself would also die unless they're setting up a sequel. Yeah. But yeah.
Which, by the way, what if she came back as a ghost and talked to a little child? Because that's what Curse of Cat People's about. It's just,
hey, why not?
She's a ghost.
Hey, honestly, hey,
and that's supposed to be Oliver and Alice's kid too. Yeah.
I love that shit, man. It's like I love those old horror movie sequels where it's just like, hey, let's get a sequel together. What's it about? I don't know. Their fucking kid. All right, and she also gets haunted by cat people. No, a ghost. Okay,
well,
sure.
And there's an old.
Are
Hollywood
you not
actress.
excited? Are you not excited for Final Destination Bloodlines?
Of course, I'm excited for Final
Destination. That's essentially the whole premise.
Listen,
those movies are like pizza. Those movies are like pizza.
Yeah, even when they're bad,
it's still pizza.
Yeah,
and listen, I've already stated how excited I am for the new Final Destination on our episode about the Betty Boop musical, and folks can just try and figure out how the hell those two connected at all. Sorry, Tom, you were starting to say.
Yeah. Wet brain. Let me reorganize myself here. No, interesting thing you said, which I think that makes this movie very interesting, is that when you say movie monster, they don't usually make them very sympathetic. You know, the Universal ones kind of bounce between Dracula's unrepentantly evil, Frankenstein's, you know, a cursed creature, Invisible Man, unrepentantly fucking psychotic. What I think is really interesting about this movie is that the ambiguity is not just within the filmmaking, it's within her. She's not really sure this is going to happen. Yeah. Like, and it's a thing that I was thinking about before, because Rebecca said something, you know, was talking about like, oh, gaslighting and how and stuff like that. And it's always a thing that I kind of like, I don't get hung up on, because as a horror movie fan, you can't really get hung up on too much. Otherwise you would not swallow a bullet.
Yeah.
Is that these kinds of movies, it's hard to take seriously as, you know, discussions with regards to gaslighting, because if someone did come up to you and was like, hey, if I get too horny, I'm going to turn into a cat, you would rightly be like, no, you're not. You're absolutely full of shit. Leave me alone.
Well, hang on. Did Tom, you're leaving something out. I agree with you. That's how I'd react. But what if they showed you a statue of King John of Serbia stabbing a cat first? Now, does that change how seriously you take that? I mean, you know,
it doesn't change how differently. It would just make me like the girl more. It's like, oh, hell yeah, that's metal.
It's not necessarily about, I think, taking her seriously, or like being like, oh, right, of course you're going to turn into a cat person. It's more like, well, I hear you. I understand this, like, culturally. Like, I remember watching this movie with Kyle and him, you know, downplaying, and Oliver downplaying the superstition about the cat people. And I turned to him and goes like, and I don't know if you know this, but whistling in the house is a Russian superstition where you're not supposed to do that. It's bad luck. And Kyle does that all the time. And every time he does that, I'm like, please don't do that. And he did that in front of my parents too. And everyone was horrified.
Oh my God, Kyle, you imbecile.
So Rebecca, please know you are allowed to take 15, 20, 30 minutes if you want to just talk about things Kyle fucked up. Please know, that is fully allowed. But
the point is, like, it's not about necessarily believing her, but hearing her out. It's from the get-go, it's like, well, that's just fucking crazy. And then it goes from that's fucking crazy to go see a doctor. And then she goes to see the doctor, and the doctor goes, I'm going to institutionalize you if you keep talking about this shit. So it doesn't even she doesn't even have a space to talk about this stuff. I
get that. It's just one of those things where you kind of just have to accept it because it's a movie and a genre movie at that. But with regards to things like that, it is just, you know, not exactly a one-to-one like comparison, really, because it is just like, if someone in real life actually did come, I know there's superstitions, and Kyle's gonna whistle because a cat is there now, and he's gonna whistle while he works on Oblivion. Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, what if this time again? Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things with not just this, but any like horror movie where people talk about it. It's like, oh, it's about gaslighting or this or that. I'm like, yeah, but like, what if someone did come up to you and say, if I got horny, I'd turn into a cat? You would rightly go like, all right, buddy, I have taxes, man. I got things to deal with.
I got shit to do. Yeah,
I do think it's the thing of, and this is a thing, for real, when you're in like a kind of a cross-cultural relationship of any kind, is it's like the trick is you kind of have to. You have to kind of navigate that, and I think Irina kind of has that too, because she's also conflicted as far as she's got that line where she says like, I want to be Mrs. Reed. I want everything that name means, right?
Yeah.
Where,
she wants to be American. She wants to assimilate. Yeah.
But also that thing of like, you can almost feel like at certain points when somebody is kind of explaining a superstition or a tradition to you or a cultural thing, that especially and this feels so Rebecca, this feels almost awkward for me because I had these notes based on my experience with my partner and all, and now it feels weird for me to like sit here while you're here and go, because the experience of a child of immigrants like feels really shitty to me. It's like, it sounds like I'm mansplaining. I'm just speaking about like our household here, right? But like there are things that are expressed as a like, this is a thing that I do.
This is just how you do it.
Yeah, but there's also the ones that are expressed like, man, I fucking wish that this wasn't how we do it. Like,
yeah.
Dude, it would be great. It would be so great if we didn't have to do ba.
Yeah.
Right?
It would be really great if we didn't have to eat cow tongue at Passover. But that's something we did. And if I were, for the roles were reversed, if I were to go over Kyle's house, my partner's house, they're not going to be eating cow tongue.
We're getting a big reveal right here in the middle of the episode. Hour in, the explanation. I mean, and also we don't know. I think Kyle's Irish, so who knows what us potato people do. It's
that's true.
Does he do a little jig?
Binge drink.
Binge, yeah. He loves a good beer.
It's so great that he's not on camera at all for this.
Binge drink and give your wife the stink eye if dinner's not ready in time.
Saints in Begorra.
It's okay. He was river dancing at a party this weekend. I think he got it out of his system.
Yeah, river dance outside of a black blues joint.
Sinners?
No, that was just me and him in Alamo days.
Oh, so so Sinners.
Yeah. But it is this thing of like, you do feel that from her. That's why that scene that hits so hard, and I think we alluded to it. I don't remember if it was before we recorded or after, but but that scene in the restaurant where the other woman walks by, the woman who they say looks like a cat. And speaks to her in a foreign tongue, and you can see on Simone Simon's face that like embarrassment almost of like, don't fucking do this when I'm with. It's not dissimilar to earlier this season when we talked about Shadows, right? And the sister just basically being like, I'm around the white people now. Don't show them how. Don't do this. Don't out me there. There is this thing of like, it's not that everybody at that table knows where Simone Simon is from. They know her background, but it's like, don't blow up my spot. Don't make this harder for me.
And I think that scene is also particularly interesting just because they are trying to cater to her, being like, she's like, I didn't even know there was like a Serbian restaurant here. And it just goes to show you that they tolerate her in as much as it can be consumed, which is also very American. Speaking of capitalism and we were also talking about the likability of her. She seems so likable in that moment, but when you get down to the bare bones of who she is for this time period, we're not supposed to like, she's from a Soviet country. She's this kind of wooden, unaffecting, like frigid woman. And she's not supposed to be the sympathetic character here, but for some reason she is. And we have to ask ourselves why.
I think a big part of what's going on here too is class stuff. which is a thing that I thought about rewatching this, and also just watching a lot of old horror movies, which is so many. Honestly, almost all of the old horror movies until maybe the nuclear age sci-fi horror stuff. But even then, there's a little bit of this where so much of the horror of the time is centered around rich people, well-to-do people, gothic castles, or here, like, they're well-to-do, they have good jobs. Psychiatry is like not a thing that's looked down upon. It's like, oh, just go see a shrink. It's fine. Like they go to museums and whatnot. And him looking at her is like, oh, you're an artist. How interesting. Almost like he's a tourist or whatever, and he's kind of like, oh, look at this immigrant lady who works a job that's so
exotic.
So, yeah, exotic, exactly. And I think there's a little bit of that too, because bringing up Alice, what we were talking about with Alice before, where did you buy her attraction or feel? It almost feels like to a point that you don't feel like there's a fire or an urge or whatever, have you, a passion between these two.
And even
because it's
and
just
even
like, these two should be together, and it's just like, oh, like these two fit because they're in the same world, they got the same thing. It's just kind of like, we're gonna fit into the same mold. Where this woman, not to say she's like almost the stereotypical European bombshell going va va voom, but she is exotic. She's got a job that none of these people would even consider, and if she gets horny, she turns into a cat. So, this is all interesting things to these guys. But at a certain point, he just gives up because it would require doing the hard work, which these people quite clearly do not do. Except for the shrink. I got to respect that the man carries around a cane with a sword in it. That's what I'm hoping
not
to
not
happen
that effective of a sword.
No, I mean,
hang on, wait a minute. Your guys' therapists don't have sword canes? I thought.
I do it on the computer.
I assumed that was normal for.
Well, I do it on the computer, so I don't necessarily know anymore.
Yeah.
But I think you should ask. That's what I'm hoping. That's I mean, I don't want to violate HIPAA here, but
but I'm hoping to be a guy who, when his hips inevitably give out when he gets older, I'm definitely gonna have a cane with a sword in it. I don't give a fuck. That's gonna be my move. But so I think a class is, especially because whether it's conscious or not, these kinds of movies are about rich people, wealthy people getting into misadventures with monsters or what have you. For Lewton and Tourneur to almost upend that and be like, hey, these people, well, here's a movie where the quote-unquote monster is someone that these people don't understand and don't really even want to understand.
And I think it's interesting from that point too, because from the get-go, she's like, do you want to come to my apartment? I live alone. So she's this immigrant woman that made a life for herself, has a career, and is just it intrigues Oliver. And in his speech to Alice, when she confesses his feelings, he says something like, I have to watch her when she's in her room. I have to be near her. I have to touch her. And it becomes this, like, I don't, just this wanting of, again, that something exotic, but at the same time, she is what America is supposed to be. She's a self-made kind of, going back to status, she's a self-made woman. She has her own place. She has her own career. She has her own life. And yet, for some reason, she's so, like, the last missing piece seems to be this, to assimilate to, could be completely American, is to have this American husband.
Well, and I also think, there's, within all of that, there's also the element of that, in a way, to bring up the actual, like, physical cats of it all, right? It does tie into the mystery of actual cats, right? Which is, a cat is not going to want to be around you all the time, right? No. And, taking all of the other stuff aside, when you strip it down to the elemental, and some of the best horror really comes down to somebody not even thinking about an elemental scary thing, but just an elemental, like, mystery of life, right? And with cats, the fundamental mystery is just this idea of, like, why is it that when you want to play, I just want to sleep, right? But
just every day you look at them and you're like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Why would you do this?
And yet you're sitting there going, God, I would fucking kill for you to just sit down and sleep. And then during the day, they're just like curled up on a chair and you're like, what do I need to do to get you to like me today? What is that going to take? What is it going to, what do you,
Snacks.
Yeah. But then again, but that's the thing. But then again, you turn around and you find yourself going, what the fuck do you mean you don't like this Fancy Feast flavor anymore? It was the only one you would eat, and now I have a case of it, and you won't eat it. But the thing about it is it's like, it is such an interesting idea to take a fundamental frustration of having a cat, right? Having a cat, owning a cat, taking care of a cat, and map that onto having a spouse, well, not just a person, but like having a spouse with whom you can't get them to go to bed with you when you want to, right? Which is like
cats are just going to do their own thing.
Yeah, and that is, and that's one of
and my friends, we have this theory that in every relationship there's a cat and a dog, and I mean, you're shaking your heads, but you're thinking of some of the relationships that you know, and you're like, that person's the cat person, and that person's the dog person.
Rebecca, I want to assure you, and I can't fully speak for Tom, but I'm just going to say, we weren't shaking our heads saying we were thinking of specific relationships. It was more the fact that you're like, well, there's the cat and there's the dog, and we both just went, oh yeah, no, we know the dog here. We know the dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah. In my relationship.
Oh, great. Oh, yes. You're home. Okay. I have so much to tell you. I have a lot of things. There's so much going on.
I got a new bowl. It's called Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered.
And it's great. I think you need.
Did you know they're making more Spider-Mans? I'm going to get to see a Spider-Man with you. Do you want to see Spider-Man? And there's a cartoon Spider-Man.
Okay. Hey, buddy. Do you want to go see the new Cronenberg? Oh boy. Yeah, movies. We're going. We're gonna go.
Body horror. Body horror with my girlfriend. Yes, please. Oh my God, I love you forever, squirrel.
Anyway, it happens. He's like, he's so sad. He's not the one editing this right now. But yeah, I mean, it's just
Thunderbolts, new Marvel. Remember when I used to work at a movie theater when Marvel movies played? I didn't know you back then, but do you remember?
Believe me, I know.
I don't know why, Tom, but for some reason I didn't know you back then, but remember has broken me in a real way. I have tears welling up. It's and Kyle, I know you can hear me. The only reason I'm laughing as hard as I am is, and again, no spoilers, but I did just have a conversation with my significant other of us trying to imagine Kyle and Tom trying to plan a certain event, and how more and more agitated Kyle is getting as he's just going, What do you mean you didn't book anything?
Okay.
You had a month. What do you mean you didn't book anything, Tom? What do you mean?
Spoiler alert. I'm not planning shit. I'm just paying the open bar and saying, hey, here's how much we need for an open bar. Great. We're drinking all night.
Listen,
and by we, I mean me.
Tom, listen, I know how this works. It's going to be like, okay, so what did you plan for my party? I got the new Shaw Brothers box set, so I figured just come over and we'll just go through that. I'll order a pizza if you guys chip in. That's how it'll go.
Rent out the
Alamo, if you guys chip in. What the fuck? Like I'm cheap. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs because I'm not cheap. Fuck you.
That's one thing I'm not.
Seriously, you can call me a lot of things, but cheap, no.
No, Tom.
Fuck you.
Tom, wait, no. I want to be clear. I am not suggesting you are cheap when it comes to like how you do things. What I'm suggesting is if you turned around and had to pay for my food, you would go, "What? Do it? Pay for your own fucking food, you piece of shit." That's what you would do. And I know.
Oh well, yeah. I'm not doing anything for you. Nice.
This is my point.
Yeah.
Oh my, that was a fun derailment. Cat people.
Cat people. Dog, and its sequel, Dog People.
I would watch that. You know.
I mean, it's like it's the BoJack principle. It's like there has to be a Mr. Peanut Butter.
I mean, but it would be interesting. I mean, it is interesting. That would be interesting. I was going to say it would be interesting if we contrasted. We can do that. If we contrast cat people and the Wolfman, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah, because Wolfman came out a year before this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And it's something, I think there's something to the idea, especially when you're talking about mid-century America, that when you, that viewed through a gendered lens, right? That the male version, Wolfman, is a guy who's like, everything's working out for me. Oh no, I've had this curse happen, suddenly this curse has fallen upon me. I need to do whatever I can to get rid of it. And the female version of it is a woman who's basically been told, listen, it's unfortunate. It doesn't make any sense, but there's some bad shit that's going to happen with your body, and you kind of just have to accept it. Okay, well, when does the curse end? Well, someday you'll die, so
there's that.
That's a plus. Like, there is that thing
Silver
of like,
lining.
Yeah.
Well, there's that scene where Oliver's like, I've never been sad before, and you're like, what?
What the fuck do you mean, bro?
What do you mean? Yeah, and of course, like the thing that has burdened his life, that has made him suddenly so sad, is this woman, this tiny woman who's just trying to figure herself out.
Wait, it's interesting too, because I was thinking about Wolfman and how I think one of the many elements that makes this movie so impactful at the time and has lasted this long is that it's such a while related to the Wolfman, werewolf sort of mythos. It is also its own specific thing, doing its own thing. There's not many cat transformation movies other than Paul Schrader or another master of horror, Mick Garris's Sleepwalkers. I think a thing that we always have to think about when it comes to horror at the time, or even in general, but especially at the time, horror has been so greatly influenced by war, and most specifically World War One, because you can't really necessarily say World War II at the time, even though you could talk about the horrible climate of Eastern Europe
during World War II.
It's filmed during World War II, but there was many years leading up to World War II where Europe and Eastern Europe was in such disarray and so much shit was going on. And she may be from Serbia specifically, but they weren't exempt from the mayhem of the 1930s and 40s.
And that's what confused me about Oliver's statement too. I was like, dude, you were alive during World War. I mean, you must have been a child.
He must have been too young for World War One. Definitely
to really affect him,
because if this was 41, that's what, 29 years prior. Yeah, he's definitely too young for. But you have to think about it in terms of war and this, because I mean, especially for her, you think about Wolfman, his sort of relationship to the curse is very much similar to how soldiers would come back from the war and have this curse on them, and they would be in almost like suicidal depression that just weighs on them, where it's just like, well, there's this thing inside me that I can't get rid of, and I'm cursed to live with it, so I'm going to try to do whatever I can to kill myself. That's basically every Wolfman sequel, and it's insane that there's like 5 Wolfman sequels in the 40s that's just like, well, what if I killed myself? And you go, interesting. But especially with this, since it is 1941, and she is from Serbia, Eastern Europe specifically, where you got to go, okay, you take the metaphor, and you mentioned it earlier, that mental health is something that definitely weighs heavily on this movie, whether it's OCD or PTSD, and I think both are relevant, but when you think of mental health in that way, you have to think of PTSD, of what this woman went through the decades of mayhem that was Eastern Europe in the early 1900s. And you got to go...
Yeah, the movie plays with that in such an interesting way through the character of Dr. Judd, where they're like, let's just throw this Freudian psychiatrist in who will just say, well, this is all your trauma. This is all your childhood trauma. Like that's what's making you act up like this. So it's almost meta in that way, where you're like, oh yeah, this movie definitely plays with like mental illness and trauma and especially generational trauma, which is kind of the very definition of what a familial curse is. And
we're also dealing with, in the case of Val Lewton, we're dealing with not just, we said not just a Russian, but a Russian Jew, right?
Yeah.
And so you're dealing with people, from that region of the world where it's not just the displacement, things that we talked about way back when we did our Tevye episode, several years ago, but like the displacement, but also this feeling of which, as I bring up Tevye because, Sholem Aleichem, the original author, was so good at sort of satirizing this idea of a people kind of going, yeah, bad shit keeps happening because it does. And
listen,
you
when
just
you
have
talk to my
internalize
mother,
it.
that's she.
Yeah.
One thing I said to her, I was like, I really wish there were more Jewish horror movies, like more horror movies that played with, like Jewish, like biblical, like Old Testament stuff like that. And all she said was, "Every day is a horror." I'm like,
Hell yeah.
no, yeah.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
like, yeah. I don't know why I expected any other answer. Like,
Rebecca, I appreciate your feedback there, and I appreciate you saying that specifically, but I also just need you to know I just spent a full day with the future in-laws, and you said that, and a shiver just went down. I'm like, oh no, I'm about to get a lecture about how we're going to raise the children again. Oh no, brace myself. The fear just set in.
Where you go up to them and be like, all right, listen, guys, I know you have very specific ideas about how we're going to raise the children, but I need you to know there will be a room dedicated to toys, and not their toys, my toys, and they can't touch them because these are toys for big boys.
Well, it's true. It's true. There is. I'm not joking. There is a King Kong action figure right behind me right now that I haven't even displayed yet. That is a premium McFarlane action figure. So but no, Rebecca, to your point, by the way, about Jewish horror, have you seen? If not, I will send a copy over. But have you seen The Golem, the Yiddish horror film from like the?
I have not yet.
Okay,
I have. It's been on my list.
Okay.
There's also a Yiddish vampire movie that I've wanted to see.
There's the Dybbuk too, and there's a whole bunch. I can, I have a bunch of them.
There's a bunch, but they just don't rise into infamy or just fame the same way.
Have you seen An American Werewolf in London then?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's probably the most famous of them. Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. But even then, Tom, you mentioned American Werewolf in London, right? Like, I guess the closest comparison there is that moment of when he goes, well, why did this happen to me? And he goes, because you're a schmuck. Right? And that kind of thing of like, well, this is why it happens to you. There is the acceptance on Simone Simon's part, right? The resignation that that we don't often, when typically in an American horror film, the moment of resignation, if it happens at all, is the bleak ending, right? Mm-hmm. The moment of resignation, is like, Rebecca, you evoked It Follows, right? And the idea of like, the most tragic ending is the idea of just giving up and going like, I'm just going to be burdened with this forever, right? This movie starts on that note. There is no part of this that has like, well, if you could find a magic amulet, like there's none of that. It's just this woman being like, I guess I have to live with this burden forever.
Well, and listen, that's just what being a woman is. You said this perfectly before, where you're like, women are just told like this thing will happen to your body, this horrific thing. How do you stop it? Oh, honey, you're gonna die eventually. Like, so it's just such a perfect metaphor.
I mean, it's almost like Val Lewton through Oliver is trying to replicate, I think, every young man's experience when menstruation is first explained to them, when they go like, what do you mean?
This just happens. You just bleed?
No, that can't be. We would have figured this out by then. That's insane. That can't possibly be true. We would have found a solution to this by now. And it's like, no, but I'm saying, but that's what I'm saying. Like when you're a young man, right? Everything, again, I'm saying like the werewolf thing and all of like, well, I have to, I can find some way to reverse the curse. Like we go through life conditioned to kind of go like, well, if something inconvenience happening, we can fix it, right? Like something's gonna happen. Something's gonna fix this thing. And like, we're not accustomed to the idea of having to go, oh, so this is just what it is, huh?
At least in movies, especially, nowadays, like there's always a solution.
Yeah.
Or at least a solution to chase, which, I don't know, spoiler, if you see The Shrouds, that's kind of one of the concepts that it plays with, is that there's always a solution. There's always a reason. And it's when David Cronenberg said this in the Q&A after the movie. It's so hard for people to deal with meaninglessness, to like there has to be a meaning, a reason for something happening. And then once a movie there's no reason why this happens, there's not a satisfying ending, that's when you get critics that are like, well, why was this even made? Like, why does it exist? And it becomes this kind of like Ouroboros, this circling kind of question.
Yeah, but don't you think Videodrome would have been better if it had a happy ending? Yeah, like, we're all on that page, right? We all think.
Wait. It didn't have a happy ending? Quick sidebar. Have you seen Ginger Snaps?
No.
Oh.
Watch it. It's a female centric werewolf movie from 1999, Canada. Or maybe 2000. Either way, the towers were still up, and it was Canada. So, movie rocks. Definitely check it out, just because it's kind of getting into that sort of stuff.
I'll say this. I will say this, and listen. Rebecca, neither you nor Kyle have been to my new place yet, but I will say this. If you find yourself at my home and you turn to my significant other and ask to watch Ginger Snaps, you're going to get a very excited reaction. So
nice.
You are more than
welcome. That's exactly who I want to watch Ginger Snaps with.
You will. Yeah.
But this talk about meaninglessness and all that is one, I think it's very interesting, and I think a very smart choice that it's not a family curse, it's a regional curse.
Yeah.
Kind of tying into that sort of Serbian, Eastern European warfare nonsense that was going on for decades at this point. But it gets into the thing that I was bringing up about war, and you kind of can't think about war. The book, you bought me that book about World War I and horror, right, Mike?
Yeah.
And I read that book. I can't remember the name of it because it's one of those long fucking academic titles or whatever. Yeah. But it's basically about how
you keep talking. I'll look it up so we can plug it.
Yeah. So it's basically about...
That's what I like to hear as a publicity manager.
The thesis of the book is essentially that horror movies and horror just storytelling in general didn't really exist, or at least blow up into what we know of it now until World War I, because World War I was death on such a massive manufactured scale that it almost broke our collective minds. Yeah. It broke people's brains, people that grew up like, my father fought in the fucking Civil War, and or my grandfather, and they told us stories. We're going to go to war. And then they fucking see planes dropping mustard gas and tanks coming up, and we're fighting in the mud, and we're not even doing it. So just, 40 million people died in World War I. Yeah. Death on a scale unseen before. And for a war that essentially had no meaning. Yeah. You still, to this day, really can't even get a clear explanation of, why did any of this happen? And it basically boils down to, everyone was kind of mad and was waiting for the excuse to just kill the shit out of each other. So it's kind of when Lovecraft started really getting prominent. He was writing beforehand, but his stuff started, and it's all about getting into that. Death has no meaning. It just is. Things are going to happen. And that's why something like this will have that sort of meaninglessness to it. There's no reason why she's cursed. She just is. The Universal monster movies, Dracula just is. Yes, they're able to kill him, but he's just been this thing for centuries. Frankenstein, he's made. And he's like, why did you make me? And the doctor's just like, because I kind of wanted to see if I could. The Wolfman, he gets cursed by someone who was cursed, and we don't know why that guy was cursed. And it comes back.
You see this at the very beginning of that quote at the very beginning of Cat People, where it's like, the darkness there will always be evil. The darkness will lie in the valleys. It'll, whatever happens. And this is a horror principles. And a principle of life, like the evil things are going to slide through the cracks. Like we can try our best, but it's going to happen.
And especially
just so I can, I told you I'd get the title. So, Wasteland: The Great War and the Origins of Modern Horror by W. Scott Poole. That's the
great book. Definitely read it if you're into history, movies, both, whatever. It's very insightful stuff. But that quote is so fucking important for not just the movie, but to contextualize you in the time the movie's made. Hitler is running fucking buck wild all over Europe at this time. And evil, World War I may have broke the world's brains, but the evil that Hitler and Japan and Mussolini were unveiling upon the world was an evil that couldn't even be comprehended, because the darkness is always there,
and that's how it was allowed to thrive.
Yeah. And that's why that's what's happening today. That's what's happening today.
And that's such a good, principle, like just a good comparison for horrors. Like, why do we still like it if it's so ridiculous? It's because it happened. Like,
it's reflecting our world onto us, and it's why you can track horror and its trends. Me and Mike did this for a fucking high school class once, which was the weirdest goddamn thing.
Yeah, we taught a high school class, which anybody listening to this show has to be baffled why that was.
But like you can essentially track human history and the wars we're in and the conflicts we're in based on the trends in horror, and that's why it may be it was derided at the time, and it's still kind of derided in many circles now. But why did the torture porn boom happen? Because we were torturing the shit out of fucking people we thought were terrorists, and we sent them to Guantanamo Bay, and we had this whole thing.
But also, and this is the thing, right? There's the flip side of the coin for all of this stuff, right? The other element of why torture porn, as you put it, was like so prominent was also like the faceless enemy. Right?
The faceless enemy.
That you couldn't see the person attacking you the same way that like we were being told, like, well, it's terrorists, right? Yes, you had the
concept. It's anonymous.
You had the concept of Osama bin Laden, right? Making videotapes a la Jigsaw and things like that, but it wasn't like you had to be afraid of bin Laden showing up at your office building, right? Like that wasn't what they were selling you. And I think to that point with Cat People, right? It's both trying to... The horror both comes from the curse that she's burdened with, right? But also this idea of how do we deal with people that we don't fully understand, right? And that knife can cut both ways, right? Obviously, we today, as the modern audience, are sitting there and going, well, this, these people are being terrible to this woman, right? These people think that they can control her or think that they can have her under control. But also you have to imagine there's a portion of the American audience who is looking at this from the angle of like, okay, this lady's showing up. How do we know that she's not dangerous, right? How do we know, because you also have to imagine like, and I'm not justifying this. I'm speaking to American paranoia. The same way that, like, when we do Invasion of the Body Snatchers next season, and we have to talk about things like the Red Scare, I'm not actually suggesting there are secret communists around every corner.
She's not supposed to be on paper, she's not supposed to be the sympathetic. She's literally from a hostile country, an alien hostile country.
And we're around the time where in America you had folks who were essentially like, exactly, but like we're around this time where people in America are kind of going, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I never really had any thoughts about my Japanese neighbors, but like
xenophobia is really starting to set in.
Well, because you're essentially dealing with, from again, American and Americentric standpoint, right? You've got this idea of like, I don't know who, like when you talk to people who were like alive in the 40s, right? Where it was all, we had a ton of like, anti-Italian sentiment in this country, anti-Irish. We certainly had anti-German during the war, but a lot of people are
anti-German, anti-Italian, anti-Irish. I get it. Listen, I get it.
Listen,
it's deserved.
They let the Italians and the Irish in, and this is what you get. The mistakes were made, is the point. But I'm saying, like, with the Japanese element of it, there was almost this thing of like with certain Americans, at least in like the East Coast, of like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean that's a problem now? What are you talking about? Like, what? I thought we were all cool. And I think that it also plays into that idea of like, it's not just xenophobia, right? I mean, it's xenophobia, but it's a specific kind of xenophobia that is like Americans going like, wait, we don't know who to trust anymore, right? Like, we're on the global stage and we don't know. I thought people were our friends. Now they're not, like up until, like I was reading a Theodore Roosevelt biography, as one is wont to do.
Of course.
And they were talking about like Roosevelt negotiating the peace in the Russo-Japanese War, and Americans kind of looking at the Russo-Japanese War and being like, those people over there are doing a thing. Right? Like there wasn't a thought of like this could impact us.
Globalization did not. It speaks softly, carry a big stick. There was really no foreign policy.
And America was very isolationist up until the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Really, really
we just didn't want to touch it.
Yeah.
After World War I, it's like we don't want to deal with this shit anymore. And then we had our own depression.
Yeah.
And,
well, there's also, I mean, even with World War I, consider the fact that like with the election, where Woodrow Wilson ultimately comes to power, is an election where war is brewing in Europe. Taft is saying, listen, if we have to go to war, we'll go to war. Theodore Roosevelt is going, so help me God, we will go to war. I want to. I'm gonna. I will bring the Rough Riders back. I definitely won't regret this decision. My sons will definitely all make it out okay. And meanwhile, Woodrow Wilson is going, I promise you, Woodrow Wilson, will not get us into World War I. That is a promise. Woodrow Wilson can promise you two things. We won't get into World War I, and women won't vote. Those are the two Wilson promises.
The Wilsonian virtues, as they were.
Yes. Wilson had some opinions. Folks,
do I have a biography for you?
Folks, go back and listen to our The Birth of a Nation episode to find out what Woodrow Wilson thought about it.
Honestly, let's be real. You don't have to listen to it.
You don't have to. But, so America is, for lack of a better term, shell-shocked by this idea of, like, America's had wars, right? But like even the sinking of the Lusitania, right, is like the catalyst for the Spanish-American War. It's catalyst where it's like, okay, fine, maybe we get attacked and we go to war, but like World War I really shakes it up. Where it's like, what do you mean these guys can just do some shit that doesn't affect us at all, right? And we kind of have to go along with it. Like, what do you mean? I don't care who shot Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Why should that impact me, right? And in a way, Oliver's character is kind of sitting there going like, yeah, that's cute. Back in Serbia, a king guy stabbed a cat, and I'm glad you guys had fun with that over there. We don't do that here.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't do that here, so,
And something else, like you're saying all this awful shit that's going on that America's starting to get involved in. And at the same time, America continues to bill itself as this land of opportunity, this land of acceptance and dream, this American dream. And what this movie goes to show is it's not that easy. This is something, again, coming from a first generation immigrant family. They were told certain things about America and how things work and how easy it could be, and you work your way up, and it doesn't work like that. There are forces that work to keep you down, be it supernatural or political or otherwise. So
I also think it's just another interesting, good, smart choice to make it Serbia that she's coming from, because it's one of those things. It's one of those countries, especially at the time, like you said, globalization's not what it is going to become. Where a guy like him, he probably doesn't know what Serbia is. He maybe has heard of it, but it's probably just one of those things like, oh yeah, I think I know what Serbia is. So if you made it like Russia or something, it would be like, oh yeah, Russia, I get it. But making it Serbia, I don't know, it gives it a specificity to the immigrant sort of story that's being told that, I don't know, just gives it a fresher set of, I don't know, eyes, storytelling goals, whatever.
It also allows you to kind of view her character without the sort of preconceived notions that come with, we have, in America, we have like certain stereotypes, of certain nationalities, right? And not always I'm not going to say not always negative, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're not always like in a matter to tear down, but just sort of like if you make a character French in a movie, right? Or you
They're
make
obviously a sex pest.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like you can make these things. It's almost like, I was thinking about this in terms of, and this is going to be a weird pull and Tom's going to tune out and I accept that, right? But I was thinking about it in terms of like the creator of One Piece at one point was like made a little side thing where he's like, well, obviously none of these characters exist in our world, but I'm going to tell you where these characters would come from if they were from our world. And he was like, well, of course, the chef character who's always smoking a cigarette and obsessed with women, he would have been from France. And, the tall, dark-haired woman who's got a dark past and has trouble connecting with her emotions, she'd be from Russia. And I'm like, you're like, right. So even when you're not intending it, we just have these certain cliches and stereotypes that we cling to.
Yeah.
But you don't have that for something like Serbia, or for example, I was for a different thing, for a different job, I was researching King Matthias I of Hungary, and you're almost sitting down, again from an American standpoint, and going, "I'll be damned, a lot of stuff going on in Hungary. They got a whole thing going on. Look at that." You're like,
yeah. I mean, growing up here, you're kind of just taught like this is the center of the world, and the printing press was not invented in England. It was invented in China, Korea. And we're not the center of everything. And that's something this movie plays with as well. It's like Oliver kind of just feels like he should be the center of everything. Like Irina's like lucky to have him.
With that ball of charisma, how could she not be?
Yeah, he's.
Listen, he made me wet. I'm just saying.
So,
because cats like being wet so much.
Yeah, clearly. But sometimes, I don't know, maybe you don't have this problem. For some reason, they hate being wet, but also if you've just taken a shower, they're like, I must go inside that tub.
Yeah. My cats have started doing that recently. I don't know why.
It's insane. Nothing better than walking into your bathroom and going, why are there small damp paw prints on the ground?
Yeah.
Why did you do this?
Or touching your cat and being like, why
are you wet?
Your tail wet?
Why are you wet? It's one of the great questions in our household is like, are you wet for an okay reason or did you fuck something up?
Yeah.
Did you turn on the sink again?
It's a 50-50 chance.
Yeah. So winding down, as we always do, Tom, how do you think Cat People did at the Academy Awards that year?
0.
That is correct. However, some of its sets did okay because the Best Picture nominees that year were 49th Parallel, King's Row, The Magnificent Ambersons, The Pied Piper, The Pride of the Yankees, Random Harvest, The Talk of the Town, Wake Island, Yankee Doodle Dandy, and the winner, Mrs. Miniver. So the sets that were used in Cat People were in Magnificent Ambersons that was up for Best Picture. And I will say, as much as we're talking about Cat People, as much as we're talking about Cat People not getting anything, as I've alluded to on the show before, King's Row is kind of a horror movie. King's Row has like Claude Rains as an alcoholic suicidal doctor and Ronald Reagan getting his legs cut off. So it's kind of a horror movie in and of itself.
But yet, something to think about and say, man, I wish that happened.
Ronald Reagan. Yeah.
It's genuinely... Again, it does feel kind of wild that his most famous line besides win one for the Gipper is going, where's the rest of me? But anyway, which was the title of one of his memoirs. In hindsight, rough title. But anyway, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. This was
for dealing with all of this. This
was fun. This went, I think, a lot longer than any of us expected. That's also because this is, the only one of the rare times where we're both doing a podcast and meeting someone for the first time. So I hope.
And we got to talk shit about Kyle. So.
Yes. I mean, in fairness, that. In terms of Tom, not rare for this show at all. That happens on the regular over here.
What now?
I was saying that on the regular, you make fun of Kyle on this show.
Oh, I make fun of him all the time on the
Oh,
show, in real life, in my dreams. It's just like
In my
part of my.
dream.
It's just part of my thing. He's like my little brother that I need to
I'm gonna
just
hold you
constantly
extra tight
razz.
tonight.
But yeah, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. You are certainly welcome back on the program. And also, I guess I also just said you're welcome in my house. So, which is not something we say to most guests on this
Listen,
show.
I might be related, so
Yeah, that is. Fuck, man, I
Good host.
forgot that, and now it's throwing me off.
The first thing you have to go tell her.
Oh God. Okay. So, Rebecca, possibly my in-law. What do you want to plug? Throw some plugs out there for folks. Let them know either where they can find you or find things you've worked on.
Yeah. Don't really have many socials or anything, but please do check out. Do check out November 2025. Scott Amon's Joe and Crawford, A Woman's Face, coming out from Simon and Schuster.
Okay. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. But everybody else, stick around. We'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration, on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
Okay, so a lot of talk in this episode about its place in horror at the time and how it's was a game changer in many ways and set a new path forward for horror movies to purposefully not show things, to purposefully sort of stretch out the scares to a breaking point. A lot of thematic stuff in here where it could be read in many different ways, where there's ambiguity involved, there's a mythology involved. It's just one of those movies where the tendrils are seemingly never ending. Something I didn't get into in the episode, but this is the kind of movie that feels more influential on the slasher movie than you would have thought. Because this feels, with its purposefully not showing things, this feels like the sort of stuff that would be, Bob Clark might have thought about when making Black Christmas, or Carpenter with Halloween. All of the giallo movies having the killer off screen with the point of view shots and whatnot. The purposeful ambiguity. And we talked a lot about how elevated horror seems to be taking a lot of lessons from this movie, sometimes the wrong lessons, or at least taking the lessons and not executing them in the right fashion. But with this pick, I'm going with a movie that will be it's eligible for the first time, is one of the groundbreaking horror movies of the decade, of the 2010s. Almost, one could argue, kickstarted the elevated horror trend, and much like Cat People, a lot of people took the wrong lessons from this movie. It's very much about the sad, tragic heroine at the center of it, the very specific cultural differences of the story being told, and the way it leads people down to a tragic path. It's my favorite horror movie of the 2010s. I am putting up The Witch, Robert Eggers' debut, into the registry. I truly think it is one of the landmark horror movies of its era. In many ways, it's sort of been overtaken in the public consciousness by Get Out as the defining horror movie of the 2010s. And while I can't necessarily be mad at that or argue with it, I would say The Witch got there first in sort of shifting the horror conversation at the time to a more, in its way, grounded themes and storytelling and characters first horror that was sort of lost for a while in the almost abyss that was horror of the 90s and the the most of the early 2000s. The Witch sort of kickstarted this new era of horror that we're in, that we're still in, that we're maybe the best 10-15 year stretch of horror that we've had in a long time, since the 70s and 80s. I think Robert Eggers is going to be one of those guys that needs to be just talked about for the rest of time. Nobody else like him, the way he just immerses you in a world and the characters, and never condescends to the characters or the story at hand, builds the mythology in a way that really gets under your skin. When I took my ex at the time, now she was my current girlfriend at the time, to see The Witch, it fucked her up for like a week or two after seeing it. It was one of those movies that, and people talk about it as one of those movies that just gets under your skin. It's just, it almost feels like he captured evil with this movie, and you're watching something that you shouldn't be watching. Eggers is one of those guys that needs to be represented. The Witch is one of the most important horror movies of the time. Definitely feels akin to Cat People in terms of how it's tackling horror and changing the way the discussion of horror at the time, the way Cat People did in the 40s. So yeah, I think The Witch absolutely needs to be thrown into the registry at some point. So yeah, that is going to be my pick for the registry, 2015's The Witch by Robert Eggers.
For me, there were a number of ways I could go. Up until a couple moments ago, seriously considered something like, as we mentioned on the episode, we talked about The Wolfman, right? And that seems like a really good parallel to this. There are a number of directions, but I think, we're talking about also the idea of low budget horror, right? And the idea of horror that does things that are outside of the typical monster movie, right? And I'm going to try and, build up some suspense here, Val Lewton style, and not reveal things until the very end. So I apologize if I seem vague here. But I was thinking about horror movies that do something a little different, horror movies outside of the convention, outside of Universal, low budget horror films that do a lot better than you would expect. And also, let's face it, horror films that received 80s remakes that are a lot more graphic. Cat People is a drama about assimilation, about the immigrant experience, about mental illness, about sexual anxiety. And similarly, my registry pick, without giving it away, is a film that asks the question, what if there was a blob? And and perhaps that blob is there. And similarly, Cat People plays with tension extraordinarily well. And my film that I'm thinking of, which could be anything, begins with a very jaunty tune that goes, beware of the blob, it creeps and leaps and glides and slides across the floor. Yeah, The Blob from 1958. Cat People is, of course, directed by Jacques Tourneur, who would make great noirs like Out of the Past. Whereas The Blob is directed by Irvin S. Yeworth Jr., a theme park builder who also made a movie called Dinosaur. There's a lot of depth and layers to Cat People. We, in 2 hours, didn't even talk about everything and all the symbolism laid in it. And people can also read symbolism into The Blob, but The Blob is a great low-budget horror movie that truly just goes, I can take some goopy stuff and put it on miniatures, and it's going to go bloop. It was filmed for next to no money. It's the starring role of Steve McQueen. The Blob is the quintessential drive-in classic. And it is a movie that, for whatever reason, for whatever little bit of magic, it's a movie that shouldn't work, and yet every part of it does. It's one of those things where you look at it and go like, yeah, this should be in the National Film Registry just because it is so representative of a certain kind of movie. We talked about 50s sci-fi. The Blob it's not the classiest version, but it's kind of the quintessential 50s sci-fi, and it innovates and plays around with the horror genre in much the same way as Cat People does, even if in completely different directions. So my pick, I know I've been super suspenseful here, but I'm going to shock you guys, is from 1958, The Blob.
Next week,
we're bringing you a little bonus episode. This week we talked Cat People. In 2 weeks, we're talking Lassie Come Home. But in between, we're going to have a conversation about animals in film. Animal folklore, like in Cat People, animal sidekicks, like in Lassie Come Home, and connecting it all, we have a short conversation with the creator of Cartoon Network's hit show Ayanu to talk about how animal folklore, animal companions, and adapting his comic to the screen all come together to make a truly special program. We really look forward to you guys hearing that. And in 2 weeks, Lassie Come Home.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natali and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampard and edited by Mike Natali and Kyle Lampard. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time. Because we don't watch you, you're watching us.